As someone who used to take pride as someone who is very driven, conscientious. I did all of the personality tests, industrious. I thrive on objective seeking, uh, goals. I thrive on those kinds of things. It was just really earth shattering thinking that, you know, reading that rock and roll wasn't found by searching for rock and roll. Or Elvis Presley
Yeah.
didn't become Elvis Presley by wanting to be Elvis Presley. He just went and sang. Or the computer. So all of those examples, you can share more on that because you wrote about them. But it was earth shattering also because I soon realized, after all, again, like after all what you said and what you wrote on why greatness cannot be planned, that somehow the modern story, and this is not to blame the system and do like anarchy or whatever. This is not like my riff, but I wasn't honoring my time on Earth the right way by setting objectives. It was just too small a feat, even though it looked really good on my checklist of, how to succeed in life. But the key word here that you mentioned, Kenneth, is serendipity, and how, you know, I don't want to spoil it because that's my question for you, but how opening that window of opportunity does really not only a service to oneself, but the world as a whole. All of the stepping stones, all of the brilliant findings that we have in life were most likely just a stepping stone, something that we found along the way of our interests. But in the modern reality, it doesn't seem that there's still a premium on it, even though the answer for you, maybe it might be frustrating to see a lot of people living objective driven life when you realize, this is there's a better way. So where do we start, as individuals to try to leverage my skill set, let's say conscientiousness, industriousness, but to tap into that serendipity, to tap into allowing the magic of life to flourish?
Right. Yeah, that's an important question. And that was part of why we wrote the book was, we recognized that, it's a very strange story that people were asking me things like this as an AI researcher. That's like a unprecedented, like, how should I live my life based on your results in AI? That's not what I'm expecting. This started to happen more as the results from this came out in AI, and there was an algorithm based on this called novelty search, which was a sort of formalization of how one could follow these principles, but for a computer, not a person. But people would say, but if this is true there, then is it true for me? Or not just for me, for my company, for my university, in my government. Like, everybody wants to know, like, everything's driven by objectives. So how does it affect everything, including me, including personal life? And so we thought that this is obviously a social issue. It's a bizarre revelation because like AI is usually not going back into like social critique, but we thought, okay, it is a social issue, and so let's try to explain in the book, like, maybe like how to think about this, like, in a way that is actually actionable, like you could do something about it, because it's really hard to succinctly address like the depth of the problem because like our whole society is structured on an objective assumption. And so what I would say is that um, the first thing to realize is that subjectivity is okay. Like, that's number one. Like, it's something that we've been taught to be very afraid of, is subjectivity. And it has different meanings to people, but it's sort of like as opposed to objectivity. Like, objectivity is like what everybody wants. It's a security blanket. So objectivity means that there's an empirical, defined way to know if I'm moving in the right direction, that I'm being objective. It's also, the word is used a lot in science. In science, it's like you have to be objective or else you're not really doing science, supposedly. So it's like the word's very respected as being objective. It's like you could say something, object to something, not the objective type of object, but just you have an objection. You can object to something that somebody's saying, and they'll want objective evidence. Like, if it's just your opinion, then nobody cares. And so everybody wants to be very objective and take pride in being objective. But the problem is that it's actually subjectivity is, I think, where many of our greatest talents are stored. So your opinion, which like all of these forces diminish, but your opinion is the most developed part of your intellect that has been created over decades of life. Like anybody can look at a chart and see that a curve is going up and to the right, like performance is going up over time or something like that. You don't need 30 years of education or life to know that. But like to actually have an intuition about what would be interesting to do next, that does take 30 years of experience to develop those intuitions. But those are subjective intuitions. It doesn't mean they're based on nothing. So the problem is that most people think that subjectivity is random or something. It's like it's not based on anything because it's not objective. So it's like, well, you like blue and I like red. So it's like, well, it doesn't make any difference. It's all just totally subjective. But it's not like that. It's like if I think that like a research direction in AI is interesting, you should be listening to me because I've spent like decades thinking about this. Now, it's not necessarily that I'm correct. After all, it's subjective anyway, so there is no correct or incorrect here.